Hello! I'm Toto.
Hi, I'm Sui.
And welcome to the first category, the second episode of K-Pop For Beginners. What is the topic today, Sui? What's the topic?
Today, let's talk about how K-pop groups are created. So, we just watched a documentary the other day. Otherwise, I wouldn't really know, the very, very beginnings. I guess back in the 90s, there was a group called... Yes. And they kind of did a new thing when they got up on stage at a contest that everybody was like, oh my gosh, this is awesome.
Well,
Except
some people didn't like it.
Some people didn't like it, but some people loved it. And so they kind of made this big splash. At some point, the Korean government realized that they could actually use this new kind of music to promote their country. They started these companies whose job was to find talent and make other bands that were similar to Soteji. So that's how SM was the first company, and JYP and YG, correct? Those are the three big, that they called them the three big companies because they were the first ones that started all this and had the first groups.
Nowadays, if a group is made in those companies, they're like guaranteed to be successful, basically.
For the most part, yeah. Of course, there's a ton of other companies besides those three.
There are tons.
So the thing that is different about K-pop from American music is that the groups get started with a blessing and the idea behind those groups from the company, the parent company usually. It's not like guys coming together in their basement and then going through all the different processes to become a band on their own and then getting a record label like it happens here.
Bands here do get a company.
Like a record label.
Occasionally, a record label.
Yeah.
But in K-pop, the company is like, we're gonna make a band, gather people, and
so the way that they gather the bands and make these groups can be various different ways. So sometimes they hold auditions, a lot of times.
They hold auditions all over the world.
Yes.
Which is how we get like K-pop members that are from
Canada and America, Japan, China, yeah. That's one way. Another way is they have survival shows, which is like American Idol here. And they have people come on and compete, and then whoever wins that show becomes the group. I watched the Monsta X one the other day. It's another way. Scouting.
One that I hear a lot that's common is they go to like school dance competitions or school shows or something. And if there's someone that they like, they go up to them and be like, hey, you want to come be in our company? Bro.
A lot of people hate on this process because they think it's not an organic way to form a band.
They call it a factory.
Factory bands, which there's truth in that.
It's being produced.
Yes. But here's the thing. Once they put these guys together in a band or they get them in their company, then they go through its training process.
For years. Those
boys bond like I don't think anything else could make them bond.
They live together. So they're basically like
and I say boys.
Or sisters.
Yeah, I just realized. Sorry, I said boys because those are the ones that I know most about, but the girls do the same thing, right? It's both boys and girls. So they bond as trainees, which is a term that they use.
Trainees.
During this training period time, which can last years and years and years. So they give up their teenage years, basically, to learn the craft and practice and...
learn how to produce.
They just learn so much
skills better.
They live together in dorms, so they become very good friends and very tight.
And you can be a trainee like in a group that's like going to be made, or a trainee like just on your own with hopes of being put in a group someday.
It's kind of like a refining process. Maybe they are a manufacturing group, but I still feel like what comes out on the other end is a true product. Does that make sense? Like somebody...
It doesn't make them any less talented.
Right, that's what I want to say. They're very, very talented, and they know what they're doing, and they've learned stuff, and I just don't think that process is the reason why we should look down on K-pop, necessarily.
So then, they're trainees, they go through the training thing, and then the day comes when they debut.
Which is a term we use a lot.
So when they debut, that means that they're officially a K-pop group, and usually they have like a debut date, their debut song, debut album. It just means all their first.
A debut stage, which is their first performance. This date is remembered and celebrated every year, like an anniversary. It also kind of defines where they are in the hierarchy of groups, because if you're an older group and you've debuted a long time ago, then the younger groups tend to look up to you, and they call them Sundays. We'll get to that in another video, but
we have about the first year after you debut, the group is considered rookies, a rookie group, which just means like you're just new.
The older groups, they have names like first generation and second generation, depending on when they debuted. So most of the groups that are that debuted kind of in the mid 2000s, we call them second generation. And there's a lot of those. First generation, I'm not sure there's as many. I don't even really know.
First generation is like H-O-T,
yeah.
G-O-D.
Yeah.
Shinwa, maybe.
Sketchies? How do you say that?
Who knows?
Sketchies? Setchies?
I don't know where like Shinwa and they follow.
Because they're kind of on the border, I bet, of first and second generation. But Super Junior is second generation, and Shiny and Big Bang for sure. There's sort of this hierarchy depending on when they debut. Then once they debut, it's a matter of how they do with their music video views and the awards they win and the response they get from the people, and if they can, you know, be popular enough to have a concert and sell out a show and all those kinds of things. But we'll talk about those later in other videos. Sometimes people will talk about, I've been with them since their debut, because sometimes you can follow a group from their trainee days, because they'll put stuff out on YouTube and people fall in love with them before they even put out a song, and then you look forward to that debut like crazy.
Sometimes groups like are able to put out a music video before they debut, like Card released Onana before they debuted as a project. Stray Kids released Elevator.
So those are one of those things that we don't know, right? Like we're just like, why do they release stuff
like
before they debut? We don't understand that.
It's just like a project to see how well they do. They'll do like an experience.
But it's not official yet or something.
No, I guess. Like in K-pop, it's like a big deal to know which company a group comes from.
Here, do we know the record labels that people are under?
What company is?
There's no way we know what record
in?
labels they're under.
Like, that's not a thing. But in K-pop, it's like they're in JYP, they're in Big Hit,
SM, and it's because every company sort of has their own personality, and so you kind of know if they're in that company. You kind of already know what kind of group they'll be, what kind of songs they'll have. They just all have a look or a feel about them.
And you'll also know like relationships with other groups. Like if there's two groups in the same company, they would call them like sister groups or brother groups.
And they call the companies like a family, the YG family. They call that SM Town.
That's like the basics.
The basics of how it gets started.
Companies and how K-pop groups are made. Quiz trivia time. The big three are SM, YG, and JYP.
Some of the other popular ones that aren't considered big three are
Big Hit, Pledis,
Starship,
Udam,
Jellyfish.
Let's see, who's on my wall?
TLP Media, Top Media. TLP Media? Does CJ have their own company, or are they just in charge of companies? CJ is a company that owns companies. FNC. What's Astro under? I've heard of that one.
But then there's like the super like random ones, like I was telling her about Sugar Entertainment earlier today. And
one of our favorite things,
Music Factory Entertainment with Say Yes.
Yeah, one of our favorite things is to find some very, very small groups
that come from very, very small companies.
And they don't get promoted because they're from small companies. But they're still out there and they're still making awesome stuff. It's just that people don't know about them because they don't have these big companies behind them. But it's a blast for us to find these small groups and give them love. Oh, Cube. We didn't say Cube.
Cube! We've been in love with Cube lately.
And let's see. Anyway, so those are some of the main ones we know, and I'm sure we've forgotten many. If there's one you want to mention in comments, let us know that we forgot about. Tell us what you think about the whole manufacturing a K-pop group process. Do you find it annoying, or do you think it makes them just as legit as anybody else?
Feel free to continue the discussion in the comments.
We would love for a discussion to happen in the comments.
Say any other fun facts about companies and stuff that you know that we didn't say, that we might not know, because like we said, we don't know everything.
Anyway, hopefully you're enjoying this discussion so far on our first little Let's Learn About K-Pop, K-Pop for Beginners series.
Bye!